Kim Tai-ho opened the door to his apartment and stopped. Someone was sitting on his couch. The figure was tall, with silver-tinted skin that seemed to glow softly in the evening light. Large amber eyes turned to look at him, unblinking and curious. "You are Kim Tai-ho," the figure said. It was not a question. "I am Vela. I am your new roommate. I arrived early. I hope this is acceptable." Tai-ho let out a long breath. He had almost forgotten. The Galactic Housing Initiative had sent him a message 3 weeks ago. As a cultural liaison officer at the Earth Galactic Relations Center, he had been selected to house an alien researcher. He had agreed because the extra money would help with rent. He had not expected her to arrive today. "Yes, that's fine," he said, setting down his bag. "Welcome to Earth. Welcome to Seoul." Vela nodded once. She was watching the holoscreen on the wall. A Korean drama was playing. On the screen, a man and a woman stood in the rain. They were crying. Their hands were clasped together tightly. "I have a question," Vela said. "Okay, these two humans. They are leaking fluid from their eyes. They are also holding hands. Are they injured? Should I contact medical services?" Tai-ho looked at the screen. He recognized the drama. It was a famous one. The two characters were confessing their love to each other after years of separation. "No, they're not injured," he said. "They're crying because they're happy, sad. It's complicated. They're happy and sad at the same time." Vela tilted her head. "That is contradictory. That is not logical." "Love isn't logical," Tai-ho said without thinking. Vela's amber eyes widened slightly. She reached for a small device on the table and pressed a button. "Love is not logical," she repeated into the device. Note recorded. Human male confirms that love defies rational analysis. Fascinating. Tai-ho rubbed his face with his hand. It had been a long day. He had spent 8 hours explaining human customs to a delegation from the outer colonies. He had not eaten since morning. And now he had an alien roommate who was recording his words like a scientist studying a strange animal. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I was going to order food." "I do not require sustenance at this time," Vela said. "But I would like to continue our discussion about love." "Our discussion? We weren't really— What is love?" Vela asked. She leaned forward. Her eyes were very intense. "I have studied your species for 7 Earth months. I have read your literature. I have watched your films. I have analyzed your music. But I do not understand this concept. My species does not have it." Tai-ho sat down on the chair across from her. "Your species doesn't have love?" "The Navari reproduce through genetic selection," Vela explained. "When it is time to create offspring, we submit our genetic profiles to the central selection system. The system matches us with the most compatible partner. We meet, we combine genetic material, and we separate. There is no emotion involved. It is efficient." "That sounds cold," Tai-ho said. "Cold? The temperature is regulated." "I do not understand. I mean, it sounds lonely, empty." Vela considered this. "I have never felt lonely. I have never felt empty. But I have also never felt what humans describe as love. I've never felt my heart beat faster when someone enters a room. I have never felt the desire to hold someone's hand simply to feel their warmth. I have never cried because someone was far away from me. I would like to understand these things. That is why I requested this assignment." Tai-ho was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, he had been in love. Her name was Yuna. They had been together for 3 years. He had thought they would get married. Then one day she told him she didn't feel the same way anymore. She left, and Tai-ho had spent the following months trying to remember how to be alone. "Why do you want to understand love?" he asked. "Because it is the one thing about humans that we cannot explain," Vela said. "Your species is not the strongest. You are not the fastest. Your technology is primitive compared to ours, but you have spread across the galaxy faster than any other species. You form bonds with each other that last lifetimes. You create art that makes other species weep, even when they do not have tear ducts. We have studied you for 200 years, and we still do not understand how you do it. The answer, we believe, is love." She reached into her bag and pulled out a datapad. I have prepared 847 questions. I would like you to answer them. I will compensate you for your time. The Navari Research Council has approved a generous budget. Taiho almost laughed. You want to pay me to teach you about love? Is that not acceptable? I can increase the amount. It's not about money, Taiho said. It's just, love isn't something you can learn from answers to questions. It's something you feel, and help me feel it, Vela said. Her voice was earnest. Help me understand what it is like to be human. I have traveled 47 light years for this. I have left my family, my research station, everything I know. I came here because humans are the most interesting species in the galaxy, and love is the most interesting thing about humans. Please, teach me. Taiho looked at her. Her silver skin reflected the light from the holoscreen. The drama was still playing. The man and woman were kissing now, still crying, still holding each other like they would never let go, he thought about. Yuna. He thought about how much it had hurt when she left. He thought about how love had made him feel alive, and how losing it had made him feel dead. Was that something he could teach? Was that something anyone could learn? Okay, he said finally. I'll try. But I'm not promising anything. Love is messy. It doesn't follow rules. You might end up more confused than when you started. Confusion is acceptable, Vila said. Confusion is the first step toward understanding. She lifted her datapad and read the first question. Question 1. What does it feel like to love someone? Taiho opened his mouth to answer. Then he closed it. He had loved Yuna for 3 years. He had held her hand thousands of times. He had whispered her name in the dark. He had planned a future with her. But when he tried to describe what that felt like, he found that he had no words. I don't know, he said honestly. I felt it, but I don't know how to describe it. Vela nodded and typed something on her datapad. Interesting. Human male has experienced love but cannot articulate its nature. This supports the hypothesis that love exists beyond linguistic expression. She looked up at him. Tomorrow, we will begin practical research. I wish to observe humans in love. I wish to see how they behave. I wish to understand the physical and emotional manifestations of this phenomenon. You want me to take you to watch couples? Taiho asked. Yes? Is that strange? Taiho thought about it. It was strange. Everything about this was strange. But somewhere deep inside him, in a place that had been quiet for 6 months, he felt something stir. Curiosity, maybe? Or hope? Or just the simple human need to not be alone, he said. It's not strange. We'll start tomorrow, Vila smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile. It was awkward and uncertain, like she had learned how to do it from a manual, but it was real. Thank you, Kim Taiho, she said. I believe this will be a productive partnership. Taiho smiled back. Call me Taiho. If we're going to study love together, we might as well be friends. Friends, Vela repeated, testing the word. Yes, I would like that. I have never had a friend before. Outside the window, the city of Seoul glittered with a million lights. Somewhere out there, people were falling in love, breaking up, getting married, crying, laughing, holding hands in the rain. And in a small apartment on the 47th floor, a human and an alien sat together in the glow of a holoscreen, about to begin a journey that neither of them fully understood. It was, Taiho thought, a very human thing to do. The cafe was warm and smelled like coffee and fresh bread. Taiho sat across from Vila at a small table by the window. Around them, couples talked softly, held hands, and shared pieces of cake. This is perfect, Vila whispered. She had a small device hidden in her sleeve, recording everything. Multiple subjects displaying romantic behavior in a controlled environment. Excellent research conditions. Please don't call them subjects, Taiho said. They're just people. Yes, people, of course. Vila turned her attention to a young couple near the counter. The man was ordering drinks while the woman watched him with a small smile on her face. Why is she smiling? He is simply placing an order. There is nothing amusing about that. She's not smiling because it's funny, Taiho explained. She's smiling because she's happy. She likes watching him. Even ordinary things become special when you're with someone you love. Vila typed rapidly on her hidden device. Ordinary actions gain emotional significance when performed by a loved one. Interesting. She continued watching. The man returned with 2 cups and handed one to the woman. She took it, and their fingers touched briefly. Both of them looked down, then back up, then smiled at each other. "What was that?" Vela asked. That moment when their hands touched. Both of their heart rates appeared to increase. I could see the flush in their skin. "That's attraction," Taiho said. "When you like someone, even small touches feel electric. Your heart beats faster. Your skin gets warm. It's like your whole body is aware of them." Electric Vela repeated. "But there is no actual electricity involved." "No, it's a feeling. It's hard to explain." The door to the cafe opened, and a young woman walked in. She had bright eyes and a loud voice, and she was heading straight toward their table. "Appa," she called out. "I knew I'd find you here." Taiho sighed.
"Oh."
"What are you doing here?" Park Soo-jin dropped into the chair next to him. She was his younger sister, 24 years old, and full of energy that never seemed to run out. She owned this cafe, which meant she had probably been watching them from the back room. "I work here, remember?" She turned to look at Vila with obvious curiosity. "So this is her. Your alien roommate?" "She's pretty. Are those eyes natural?" "Yes," Vela said. "All Navari have amber-colored eyes. It allows us to see in low-light conditions." "Cool." Soo-jin leaned closer to her brother. "So what are you two doing? On a date?" "No," Taiho said quickly. "I'm helping her with research. She's studying human love." "Love." Soo-jin's eyes lit up. "Oh, that's perfect. Appa is an expert at love. He cried for 3 weeks straight when Yuna left him." Soo-jin. "It's true. He ate ice cream every night and watched sad movies until 2 in the morning. It was very educational." Vila leaned forward with interest. "This is relevant to my research." "Taiho, you experienced significant emotional distress after the end of your romantic relationship." Taiho felt his face grow hot. "Can we talk about something else?" No, Soo-jin said. "This is important. Vila, my brother, loved Yuna very much. When she left, it broke his heart. But that's the thing about love. It hurts. It hurts so much sometimes that you think you might die. But you don't die. You keep going. And eventually, if you're lucky, you find someone else to love." Vila was silent for a moment, processing this information. Love causes pain. But humans continue to seek it despite the pain. This is highly illogical. "Love isn't about logic," Soo-jin said. "It's about feeling alive. When you love someone, really love them, everything is brighter. Food tastes better. Music sounds more beautiful. Even the air feels different. And yes, when you lose that love, the world goes gray. But those bright moments, those moments when you feel infinite, they're worth the gray times." Taiho looked at his sister. Sometimes she surprised him. Later that evening, Taiho and Vila walked through a park near their apartment. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Couples walked past them, some holding hands, some pushing baby carriages, some just walking side by side in comfortable silence. "I would like to try something," Vela said. "What?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a bundle of flowers. Taiho counted them. Exactly 12 roses. "I researched the optimal number of flowers for romantic gestures," Vela explained. 12 represents completeness and perfection. "I also prepared a poem." She cleared her throat and began to read from her datapad in a flat, monotone voice. "Your eyes are like stars in the night sky. Your smile brings warmth to my heart. I wish to hold your hand forever." End of poem. Taiho stood very still. Then, despite everything, he laughed. It was a real laugh, the kind that came from deep in his chest. He hadn't laughed like that in months. Vela looked confused. "Did I do something wrong?" "The research indicated that flowers and poetry are effective romantic gestures." No, Taiho said, still smiling. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just, love isn't about following a formula. You can't calculate your way into someone's heart. The flowers are nice. The poem is nice. But what makes them special isn't the number of roses or the words you choose. It's the feeling behind them. It's the fact that you thought of someone and wanted to make them happy. Vila considered this. So the gesture itself is less important than the intention behind it. Exactly. You could give someone a single flower picked from the side of the road, and if it came from a place of genuine love, it would mean more than 1,000 expensive roses. Vila looked down at her 12 perfect roses. I think I understand. I selected these roses based on data analysis, but a human in love would select them based on emotion. The flowers would represent their feelings, not a calculation. Yes. Taiho took one of the roses from her bundle. Here, let me show you. I'm giving you this rose because I think you're brave. Brave. You came 47 light years to understand something your species has never experienced. That takes courage. This rose is for your courage. Avella took the rose. She held it carefully, like it was something precious. Thank you, Taiho. This feels different from when I gave you the roses. I do not fully understand why. Because it meant something, Taiho said. That's the secret. Love is just giving meaning to ordinary things. A flower, a touch, a look across a crowded room. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We take the ordinary and make it extraordinary. They walked in silence for a while. The sky grew darker. Stars began to appear. Taiho Vela said quietly, I have been recording observations about human love, but today I observed something about myself. What's that? When you laughed earlier, I felt something in my chest. A warmth. A lightness. I do not know what it means, but it was pleasant. Is that significant? Taiho looked at her. In the fading light, her silver skin seemed to glow softly. Her amber eyes reflected the first stars of evening. She was holding the single rose he had given her, like it was the most valuable thing in the universe. Yeah, he said softly. That might be significant. That night, Vila sat alone in her room, writing in her research log. She wrote for a long time, trying to capture everything she had experienced. But when she reached the part about the warmth in her chest, she found that she had no words for it. No data points. No analysis. She wrote simply, Human love appears to leave permanent marks on those who experience it. I am beginning to suspect that I am not immune. Further study required. Personal involvement. Unavoidable. She looked at the single rose and a glass of water on her desk. It was already beginning to wilt. In a few days it would be dead. But somehow that made it more precious, not less. She was starting to understand. The wedding hall was filled with flowers, soft music, and the quiet murmur of hundreds of guests. Taiho adjusted his tie for the third time and looked over at Vela. She was wearing a dark blue dress that Sujin had helped her choose. Her silver skin seemed to shimmer under the warm lights. This is remarkable, Vila whispered. All these humans gathered in one place to witness a bonding ceremony. The emotional energy is intense. 8. It's a wedding, Taiho said. My cousin Ji Woo is getting married. This is a big day for our family. How long have they known each other? Gi Woo and her partner? About 5 years. They met in university. They've been together ever since. Vila nodded slowly. 5 years of shared experiences before making a lifetime commitment. That is a significant investment of time and emotion. She paused. What if it doesn't work? What if they change their minds in 10 years? 20 years? Then they'll deal with it when it happens, Taiho said. That's part of love. You don't get guarantees. You just have to trust that it's worth the risk. The music changed, and everyone stood. The doors at the back of the hall opened, and the bride appeared. Giwoo was wearing a white dress that flowed behind her like water. She was crying already, but she was smiling too. Her father held her arm, guiding her down the aisle toward the man waiting at the front. Vila watched with wide eyes. All around her, humans were crying, not from sadness, but from joy. She could not understand how those two emotions could exist together, but she could see that they did. The air itself seemed to vibrate with feeling. "They're all crying," she whispered to Taiho. "Not the bride, the groom, the families, even you." Taiho touched his face and realized she was right. He hadn't even noticed the tears forming. Yeah, weddings do that to people, but why? This is a happy occasion. Why would happiness cause tears? Because sometimes feelings are too big to stay inside. They overflow. Tears are just one way for that to happen. He watched his cousin reach the front of the hall and take her partner's hands. When you love someone so much that it fills every part of you, sometimes your body doesn't know what to do with all of it. So you cry. You laugh. You hold on tight and hope it never ends. The ceremony continued. The couple exchanged vows. They promised to love each other in sickness and health, in good times and bad, until death separated them. Vila listened carefully to every word. "They are making promises they cannot guarantee," she said quietly. "They do not know what the future holds. They do not know if they will always feel this way. Yet they promise anyway." "That's what makes it meaningful," Taiho said. "Anyone can make a promise when they know the outcome. But promising to love someone forever, knowing that forever is uncertain, knowing that you might fail, knowing that you might get hurt, that takes real courage." Vila was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very softly, "I think I am beginning to understand." After the ceremony, there was a reception in the garden. Tables were decorated with candles and flowers. People ate and drank and danced under strings of lights that looked like stars. Taiho introduced Vela to several family members, all of whom were polite but curious about the alien in their midst. Taiho was getting drinks when he saw her. Yuna. She was standing across the garden with a man he didn't recognize. They were holding hands. She was laughing at something he said. Taiho felt something twist in his chest. It was not a pleasant feeling. Vila appeared beside him. She looked at his face, then followed his gaze to Yuna. "That woman, she is significant to you." "That's Yuna," Taiho said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "My ex-girlfriend, the one who left you." "Yes." Vila watched as Yuna leaned into her new partner, looking happy and relaxed. "You still have feelings for her?" Taiho didn't answer. He didn't need to. "This is heartbreak," Vila said slowly, studying his expression. "I have read about it. I have seen it in your dramas. But seeing it in person is different. Your face has changed. Your posture has changed. Even your breathing has changed. The pain is visible. Can we not talk about this?" Taiho asked. "Of course. I apologize." Vila was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Would you like to leave? We do not have to stay." "No, this is Ji Woo's day. I'm not going to ruin it because I can't handle seeing my ex." They stayed for another hour. Taiho smiled and talked to relatives and pretended everything was fine. But Vila could see that he was struggling. She watched him carefully, recording not data this time, but something else. Something that felt like concern. Later that night, Taiho stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The reception was winding down. Most of the guests had gone home. The music had stopped, and the garden below was quiet and dark. He heard footsteps behind him and knew it was Vila. "You do not have to say anything," she said, standing beside him. "I simply did not want you to be alone." Taiho looked at her. In all his months as a cultural liaison, in all his interactions with aliens of 100 different species, he had never met one who understood human emotion as quickly as Vela was learning. "Thank you," he said. They stood in silence for a long time. The city lights glittered below them. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn sounded. A dog barked. Life went on, as it always did. "Can I ask you something?" Taiho said finally. "Of course. Do you ever feel lonely?" "On your world, I mean. With all your efficiency and your genetic matching and your logical systems, do you ever just wish for something more?" Vela was quiet for a while. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, more uncertain. "I never used to. Loneliness is a human concept. Navari do not experience it. We do not need emotional connections to feel complete." She paused. But since I came to Earth, I have begun to wonder. I have seen humans laugh together, cry together, hold each other through pain and joy. I have seen them sacrifice everything for people they love. And I have started to question whether efficiency is enough. Whether logic is enough. She turned to look at him. Her amber eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. Tonight, I watched you suffer. I saw pain in your eyes. And I felt something I have never felt before. I wanted to take that pain away. Not because it would benefit my research. Not because it was logical. Simply because your pain caused me distress. Is that what caring about someone feels like? Taiho looked at her for a long moment. This alien woman who had traveled across the galaxy to understand love was standing beside him, learning to feel it without even realizing. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what it feels like. Bella nodded slowly. Then, without saying anything else, she reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth. Neither of them said anything. They just stood there, two beings from different worlds, holding hands in the darkness while the city slept below them. It was not logical. It was not efficient. It served no practical purpose, but it was exactly what Taiho needed. The next morning, Vela sent her report to Commander Oris on the Navari research vessel. She wrote about weddings and vows, about promises made without certainty, about humans who risked everything for love. But she did not write about holding Taiho's hand on the balcony. Some things she was beginning to understand were not meant to be data points. Some things were just meant to be felt. Commander, Oris arrived on Earth 3 days after the wedding. He was tall, even for a Navari, with pale silver skin and eyes that were colder than Vila's. He wore the formal uniform of the Navari Research Council, and he looked at everything around him with obvious distaste. This planet is chaotic, he said, stepping out of the transport pod. The noise, the smells, the disorder. How do humans function in such conditions? Vela stood waiting for him with Taiho at her side. They adapt, Commander. Humans are remarkably adaptable. Adaptable, yes. Oris's cold eyes moved to Taiho. So, this is the human who has been assisting your research. The one teaching you about love? Yes, Commander. Kim Taiho has been very helpful. Oris walked a slow circle around Taiho, studying him like a scientist examining a specimen. Unremarkable. Average height. Average physical condition. Nothing special. He stopped in front of Taiho and looked directly into his eyes. Tell me, human, what makes you qualified to teach one of our finest researchers about love? Taiho kept his voice calm. I'm human. That's my only qualification. Indeed. And that is precisely the problem. Oris turned to Vela. I have read your reports. They concern me. You were sent here to study human love objectively, to analyze it, to understand its mechanisms so that we might learn its secrets. Instead, your reports have become personal, emotional. You are losing your objectivity. Vela stiffened. Commander, with respect, love cannot be studied objectively. It must be experienced to be understood, as dangerous thinking. Oris's voice was sharp. The Navari have survived for 10,000 years because we do not allow emotion to cloud our judgment. We make decisions based on logic and data. That is our strength. If you allow yourself to be contaminated by human feelings, you will become weak, unreliable, unfit for service. I am not contaminated, Vela said, but her voice wavered slightly. Yeah, you not. Oris reached into his coat and pulled out a datapad. Let me read from your most recent report. Human love cannot be measured or quantified. It exists beyond the boundaries of rational analysis. I am beginning to believe that the only way to truly understand it is to experience it myself. Those are your words. Vela. They sound like the words of someone who has already been compromised. Taiho stepped forward. With respect, Commander, Vela is doing important work here. She's learning things that no Navari has ever learned before. What exactly has she learned? Oris turned his cold gaze to Taiho. Enlighten me, human. Tell me what makes love so special. Convince me that it is more than just a primitive survival mechanism. Taiho felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. Love isn't about survival. It's about connection. It's about finding someone who sees the real you and chooses to stay anyway. It's about being vulnerable and trusting that you won't be hurt. It's about building something beautiful with another person, even knowing that it might not last forever. Oris laughed. It was a cold, humorless sound. Connection, vulnerability, trust, these are just words, human. They describe nothing concrete, nothing measurable. He held up his hand. Let me tell you what love actually is. It is a chemical reaction in your brain. Dopamine creates feelings of pleasure. Oxytocin creates feelings of attachment. Serotonin creates feelings of happiness. That is all love is. Chemistry, biology, evolutionary programming designed to encourage reproduction. There is nothing transcendent about it. There is nothing special. Taiho opened his mouth to argue, but found he had no words. Part of him knew that Oris was right. Love was chemicals. It was biology. Every feeling he had ever felt could be explained by science. But that couldn't be all there was. Could it? That night, Taiho sat alone in the apartment. Vela had gone with Oris to the Navari research vessel for a formal review. She might not come back. Oris had made it clear that he wanted to end her assignment and bring her home. Sujin found him staring out the window at the city lights. You're in love with her, she said, sitting down beside him. What? No, I'm not. Upa, I'm your sister. I've known you my whole life. I know what you look like when you're falling for someone. She nudged his shoulder. It's okay. She's nice. A little weird, but nice. She's not human, Sujin. She's from another planet. She doesn't even understand what love is. Maybe, but she's learning. And you're teaching her. Sujin was quiet for a moment. Do you remember what Mom used to say? That love isn't something you find. It's something you build. Brick by brick, day by day, until suddenly you look around and realize you've built something beautiful. Taiho closed his eyes. He could almost hear his mother's voice. You've been building something with Vela, Sujin continued. Every conversation, every lesson, every moment you've spent together. Maybe she doesn't understand love yet, but she's starting to feel it. I can see it in the way she looks at you. Even if that's true, it doesn't matter. Oris wants to take her back. He thinks she's been contaminated by human emotions. Sujin snorted. Contaminated? That's ridiculous. Emotions aren't a disease. They're what make life worth living. She stood up and headed toward the door. If love is worth teaching, Appa, then it's worth fighting for. Don't give up on her. Not yet. 2 days later, Vela returned to the apartment. Her face was troubled. She sat down across from Taiho and was silent for a long time. Oris has ordered me to conclude my research, she said finally. I am to return to the Navari vessel tomorrow. He says, I have been here too long. He says, I have lost my scientific perspective. Taiho felt his heart sink. Is he right? Have you lost your perspective? Vela looked down at her hands. I do not know anymore. When I first came here, everything was clear. Love was a phenomenon to be studied. Humans were subjects to be observed. But now, she shook her head. Now I find myself wondering what you are doing when you are not with me. I feel a warmth in my chest when you laugh. I felt distress when I saw you in pain at the wedding. These feelings are not scientific. They are not logical, but they are real. She looked up at him, her amber eyes filled with confusion. Taiho, if love causes so much pain, why do humans keep seeking it? You loved Yuna, and she left you. Your heart was broken. Yet I sensed that you would risk that pain again. Why? What makes it worth the suffering? Taiho thought about the question for a long time. He thought about Yuna. He thought about his parents, who had loved each other for 40 years before his mother passed away. He thought about Ji-woo at her wedding, crying and smiling at the same time. Because the moments when it doesn't hurt, he said slowly, those moments make us feel infinite. When you're with someone you love, really with them, the whole universe shrinks down to just the two of you. Nothing else matters. Not time, not space, not problems or fears, just that connection. That feeling of being completely known and completely accepted. He paused. Those moments don't last forever. Nothing does. But while they're happening, they're the closest thing to eternity that humans ever experience. Vela was silent. Her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears, if Navari could cry. "I do not want to leave," she whispered. "I do not want to go back to a world where I will never feel this way again." "Is that wrong? Is that contamination?" Taiho reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth, just like it had been on the balcony at the wedding. "No," he said. "That's not contamination. That's being alive." They sat together in the fading light, holding hands, not speaking. Tomorrow, Vela would have to face Oris and make her choice. But tonight, at least, they had this moment. And for now, that was enough. The Navari research vessel hung in orbit above Earth, a silver needle against the darkness of space. Inside the observation deck, Commander Oris stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the blue planet below. "You have made your decision?" he asked without turning around. Vela stood behind him. She was wearing her formal research uniform for what might be the last time. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. "Yes, Commander. I have, and I am not leaving Earth. I am staying to continue my research." Ois turned to face her. His expression was calm, but there was something cold and disappointed in his eyes. "You understand what this means? If you stay, you will be abandoning your duties to the Navari Research Council. You will be turning your back on your people, your family. Everything you have known, I understand. You are willing to give all of that up for what? For emotions? For feelings? For this primitive concept that humans call love?" Vela took a deep breath. She had spent the entire night thinking about this moment, preparing for it, practicing what she would say. But now that it was here, the practiced words seemed hollow, so she spoke from somewhere else instead, somewhere deeper. "Commander, I have studied 347 species across the galaxy. I have observed their cultures, their rituals, their ways of forming bonds. The Zentari reproduce by splitting their cells. The Mirathi form hive minds where individual identity does not exist. The Koloth mate once, violently, and then die. Every species has their own way of continuing their existence." She stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. "But none of them write songs about genetic compatibility. None of them create art that makes other beings weep. None of them stand in the rain and hold hands and cry from happiness at the same time. None of them make promises they know they cannot guarantee simply because making the promise matters more than keeping it." Oris raised an eyebrow. "You sound like a human. Perhaps I do. And perhaps that is not the insult you believe it to be." Vela stood taller. "The Navari have survived for 10,000 years through logic and efficiency. We have conquered disease, extended our lifespans, built vessels that cross the galaxy. We are powerful and advanced and rational. But Commander, in all those 10,000 years, have we ever felt infinite?" Oris was silent. "Humans are not the strongest species," Vela continued. "They are not the fastest. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. They live brief lives filled with chaos and pain and uncertainty. And yet they have spread across the galaxy faster than any other species. They have formed alliances with races that have nothing in common with them. They have made friends with beings who should be their enemies. Everywhere they go, they leave something behind. Not technology or resources. Something else. Something we cannot measure or quantify." "Love," Oris said flatly. "Yes, love." Vela's eyes were bright with conviction. Humans love without logic. They love without guarantees. They love knowing that they will probably be hurt, knowing that it might end in pain, knowing that the person they love might leave them alone and broken. They love anyway, not because it is smart, not because it is safe, but because loving someone, truly loving them, is the most courageous thing any being in the universe can do. She met Oris's gaze directly. "That is not weakness, Commander. That is not contamination. That is something the Navari have never understood because we have never allowed ourselves to feel it. And I am tired of not feeling." The observation deck was silent for a long moment. Oris stood motionless, his face unreadable. Then he spoke. "You are making a mistake, Vela. Emotions will bring you nothing but pain. But they will also bring me joy, connection, warmth, all the things I never knew I was missing." She took a step back. "I am sorry, Commander, but my decision is final." Back on Earth, Taiho sat at his desk, writing a letter. He had never been good with words, but something about putting thoughts on paper, real paper, felt right. It felt human. He wrote about the day Vila arrived, confused by a crying couple on a holoscreen. He wrote about the 12 roses and the monotone poem, and the first time he had laughed in months. He wrote about the wedding, the balcony, the way she had held his hand without being asked. He wrote about all the moments he didn't realize were special until they were gone. And he wrote about what she had taught him. Before Vela came, Taiho had forgotten why love mattered. Yuna's departure had left him empty, convinced that all the pain wasn't worth it. But watching Vila learn about love, seeing it through her eyes, reminded him of something important. Love was not about avoiding pain. It was about choosing joy anyway. It was about being brave enough to feel, even when feeling hurt. It was about building something beautiful with another person, brick by brick, knowing that it might crumble someday, and building it anyway. He finished the letter and folded it carefully. He didn't know if Vela would ever read it. He didn't know if she was already gone. It's back to a world where feelings were considered a weakness and connection was calculated by machines. But he had written it anyway, because that was what love meant. Trying, hoping, reaching out across the distance. Even when you weren't sure anyone would reach back, the door opened. Vila walked in. Her formal uniform was gone. She was wearing the blue dress from the wedding, the one Sujin had helped her choose. Her amber eyes were bright with something new. Something alive. "I'm staying," she said simply. Taiho stared at her. "You're what?" "I told Oris no. I told him I am not leaving." She crossed the room to where he was sitting. "I do not fully understand love yet, Taiho. I do not know if I ever will. But I know that when I am with you, I feel things I have never felt before. Warmth, curiosity, fear, hope, all of it at once. All the time. It is confusing and terrifying and wonderful." She reached into her bag and pulled out a single rose. It was a bit crushed from the journey, and some petals had fallen off. It was not perfect. But she held it out to him like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. "I am giving you this rose," she said, "because you taught me that love is not about efficiency or logic or genetic compatibility. Love is about choosing someone. Every day. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts." She paused. "I am choosing you, Taiho. I do not know what that means yet, but I want to find out."